A camera lens got built for a single shot. It was used once, then it got retired forever. A king fell in love with a secretary on a movie set. Decades later, her son became a monarch. An actor's saddle sores got so bad, he had to invent a fix on the spot. Real desert tribesmen liked it so much, they copied it. They even gave him a nickname for it. None of that is in the movie. All of it happened while they were making it. Lawrence of Arabia won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It's still ranked among the greatest films ever made. But the story behind the camera is just as strange as the one in front of it. There's a screenwriter erased from his own film for over 3 decades. There's real war wreckage sitting in the desert where they filmed. And there's a director who may have secretly voiced one of the movie's most important lines himself. Here are 15 jaw-dropping facts you've probably never heard. Let's saddle up. Number 1. Picture the shot. A lone rider grows out of a shimmering heat haze. He starts as a speck on the horizon. By the end, he's a full human being, riding right at the camera. The whole thing takes almost a full minute of screen time. That's Sherif Ali's entrance in Lawrence of Arabia. Film schools still teach it as one of the greatest character introductions ever put on screen. Here's the problem David Lean ran into. Everyone told him it couldn't be done. A mirage is an illusion in the human eye, they said. Not something a camera lens can actually capture. Lean didn't buy it. He told his cinematographer, Freddie Young, "I don't know how in bloody hell we'll do it, but I want a mirage." Then, while scouting locations on a mudflat, Lean pulled out his own personal Hasselblad camera. It was almost on a whim, and there it was. A mirage, sitting right there on film. Turns out mirages could be photographed after all. Nobody had simply tried hard enough. Proving it was possible was only step 1. To actually get the shot, Panavision's engineers built something new. A custom 482mm telephoto lens. It was made for this single scene and nothing else. That massive lens let Freddie Young compress the distance between camera and subject. Omar Sharif could ride toward the camera from what looked like miles away. Heat waves rippled around him. It looked like he was materializing out of nothing. The shot worked so well it became legendary. And then the lens got retired. Panavision still owns that exact 482mm lens today. It hasn't been used on another production since 1962. Cinematographers have their own nickname for it, the David Lean lens. If a single camera lens can become that legendary, imagine what else is buried in this film's history. That's exactly why it's worth hitting like and subscribing before we go any further. Facts 2 through 15 only get stranger from here. Number 2. King Hussein of Jordan agreed to support the production. He didn't just grant permission to film in his country. He handed over an entire brigade of his own Arab legion to work as extras. That's why so many of the soldiers charging across the screen in Lawrence of Arabia are real soldiers, not actors. He also provided transportation, location scouting, and constant logistical support. King Hussein visited the set often to check on progress. Those visits led to something nobody involved in the production could have predicted. During one of his trips, the young king met a British woman. He wasn't even 30 at the time. She was working as a secretarial assistant connected to the production. Her name was Antoinette Gardiner. Friends called her Tony. What started as small talk during his set visits turned into something more serious. Filming stretched on through the Jordanian desert, and so did their relationship. On May 25, 1961, while cameras were still rolling on Lawrence of Arabia, King Hussein and Antoinette Gardiner married. She converted and took a new name, Muna al-Hussein. Their son, born the following year, would eventually take the Jordanian throne himself. He's known today as King Abdullah II, ruling since 1999. So one of the most famous war films ever made is also, indirectly, responsible for something else entirely, how one of the Middle East royal families came together. Number 3. Peter O'Toole was about to become one of the most famous faces in cinema. He was playing one of history's most legendary desert fighters. There was just one problem. He had almost no experience riding a camel, and camels were about to become his main mode of transport for the next 9 months. His first riding lesson did not go well. Within a short time in the saddle, O'Toole was in real pain. It was serious enough to threaten the shooting schedule. Nearly every major scene needed him on a camel. O'Toole's fix was simple and a little ingenious. On a break from filming, he walked into a local market. He bought a square of foam rubber. He tucked it under his saddle as padding. Problem solved. Here's the part people don't expect. The Bedouin extras working on the production noticed O'Toole's foam cushion. They decided it was a genuinely good idea. They started copying it on their own saddles. Before long, squares of foam rubber were showing up on camel and horse saddles across the entire set. The Bedouin even gave O'Toole a nickname to honor the invention. They called him Abu Isfanj, father of the sponge. If you appreciate a practical problem solved with pure improvisation, do us a favor and tap subscribe. O'Toole's next close call on set was a lot more serious than a sore backside. Fact 4. During filming of the assault on Aqaba, Peter O'Toole was thrown from his camel. It's one of the film's biggest, most chaotic battle sequences. It happened in the middle of dozens of charging horses and riders. For a moment, he was down on the sand, in real danger. Mounted extras were thundering past. They might not have seen him in time. By most accounts, it was his own camel that kept him from serious harm. The animal stayed close instead of bolting. That bought just enough time for the other riders to spot O'Toole. They steered around him. He walked away shaken, but unhurt. Here's where it gets eerie. Decades earlier, something almost identical happened for real. It was the Battle of Abu el-Lisan in July 1917, the actual fight that led to the historic capture of Aqaba. The real T.E. Lawrence was thrown from his own camel. It happened in almost identical chaos in the middle of a mounted charge against Ottoman forces. He escaped serious injury by pure luck, surrounded by galloping animals that could easily have trampled him. Nobody on the production planned that parallel. It's just one of those strange coincidences, making the movie briefly lined up with the true story it was trying to tell. Number 5. Nearly a decade before Peter O'Toole put on Lawrence's robes, a completely different film was already in the works. It was about T.E. Lawrence too. Its star was going to be John Wayne. On January 14, 1953, the trade paper Variety broke the news. Cinerama was moving into full-feature filmmaking. At the time, Cinerama was a 3-camera widescreen process, best known for scenic travelogues. 2 projects were announced. One was the Broadway musical Paint Your Wagon. The other was a biographical film about Lawrence of Arabia, with John Wayne attached to star. The man pushing hardest for this version was Lowell Thomas. He was a journalist who had covered the Arab Revolt in person during the First World War. He'd personally photographed T.E. Lawrence in Arab dress. After the war, Thomas built a hugely popular lecture show around Lawrence's exploits. It made Lawrence a household name on both sides of the Atlantic. The show reportedly drew several million paying attendees across Britain and the United States. Thomas basically invented the public legend of Lawrence of Arabia. This was years before any studio thought to put it on film. The Cinerama version with John Wayne never got made. It's genuinely hard to picture Wayne's confident, all-American screen presence playing a character this conflicted. Lawrence was complicated and contradictory. That might be exactly why, when a version finally did get made a decade later, David Lean went looking for someone far less predictable instead. Speaking of near misses that could have completely rewritten film history, if you're enjoying these, go ahead and subscribe now. A couple of the facts still to come sound almost too strange to be true. Number 6. Lawrence of Arabia dramatizes T. Lawrence's guerrilla campaign against the Ottoman-controlled Hejaz Railway. It was a vital supply line. Lawrence and his Arab allies attacked it again and again with explosives during the First World War. When the production scouted locations in Jordan, they weren't working in a landscape untouched by that history. They were filming in the same desert where it actually happened, more than 4 decades earlier. Sections of the old Hejaz Railway still sit out in that desert today. Rusted locomotives, stretches of track, left almost exactly where they were destroyed. They aren't props, they're genuine wreckage from the real campaign the film is depicting. For a production built around recreating history, that's about as authentic as it gets. Cameras pointed at the actual aftermath of real events, aged by decades of desert sun, instead of a set dressing budget. It's part of why the desert sequences in Lawrence of Arabia still feel less like a movie set. They feel like a real place where something real happened. Because, in a very literal sense, it was. Number 7. Lawrence of Arabia needed a small supporting performance that turned into an unexpected diplomatic situation. English actor Henry Oscar was cast in a minor role as Siliam, a servant to Prince Faisal. His scenes called for him to recite passages from the Quran. There was just one issue. Oscar didn't speak Arabic. He'd be reciting sacred text phonetically without understanding the language. That raised real concerns for the Jordanian officials. They'd been extraordinarily generous to the production, providing soldiers as extras, transportation, and constant cooperation. Rather than shutting the scene down, Jordanian authorities proposed a compromise. Oscar could film the recitation, but only on one condition. A qualified imam had to be present on set for every take to make sure nothing was mispronounced or misquoted. The production agreed. It's a small, easy-to-miss detail in the finished film, but it says a lot. It shows how seriously everyone involved took the responsibility of portraying a sacred text on screen, and it shows how the goodwill between the filmmakers and their Jordanian hosts got tested and held. If details like this are the kind of thing that keeps you watching, smashing that like button genuinely helps. It helps more people find facts like these.
Number 8.
Here's a record most people don't realize exists. Lawrence of Arabia is officially the longest film ever to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. Not the longest movie ever made, the longest one to actually win Hollywood's top prize. The numbers come from a post-premiere memo dated December 13, 1962. It measured the film at just under 25,000 feet of 70mm film, converted and calculated at the standard projection rate. That works out to exactly 222.11 minutes, and that's before adding the overture, intermission, and exit music that roadshow audiences sat through in 1962. For 23 years, the record for longest Best Picture winner belonged to Gone with the Wind. It measured out to 220.93 minutes. It was never re-edited after its 1939 premiere. When film preservationist Richard May ran the numbers on both films side by side, there was a clear winner. Lawrence of Arabia beat it by a little more than 1 minute. That's the entire margin between two of the most ambitious films Hollywood has ever produced. Both built for the full roadshow treatment, both demanding hours of commitment from audiences who apparently didn't mind one bit.
Number 9.
Anthony Quinn was already a major international star when he was cast as the Bedouin leader Auda Abu Tai. He wasn't interested in coasting on his fame. He studied real photographs of the historical Auda for hours. Then he applied his own makeup by hand, working to look as close to the real man as physically possible. The story goes that Quinn showed up to meet David Lean for the first time. He was already in full costume and makeup. Lean looked right past him. That's according to the account that's been repeated ever since. Quinn was one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and Lean assumed he was looking at a local extra instead, someone who just happened to resemble the real Auda Abu Tai almost perfectly. Impressed, Lean reportedly turned to an assistant and gave an order. Track down Anthony Quinn. Let him know they'd found someone better suited to the role. Someone to replace him. It wasn't until someone on the crew spoke up that the mix-up got sorted out. The mystery extra was Quinn, already transformed. Whether it happened exactly that way or has gotten a little more polished with each retelling, nobody's entirely sure. Either way, it stuck around as one of the most repeated stories from the production. Simple reason: everyone who's seen Quinn's performance believes it could be true. If a story like that deserves to stay alive, subscribing and sharing this video helps. It's basically the modern version of keeping a legend going.
Number 10.
Robert Bolt is the name most people associate with the Lawrence of Arabia screenplay. And rightly so, most of the finished dialogue is his, but he wasn't the first writer on the project. And the first writer never got the credit he was owed while he was alive to see it. Michael Wilson was hired years before Bolt came aboard. He wrote multiple drafts that shaped the film's structure, which scenes existed, in what order, how the story was built. David Lean was reportedly impressed enough by an early draft to send Wilson a telegram praising it, but Lean ultimately felt Wilson's version leaned too heavily on politics and history. So producer Sam Spiegel brought in Robert Bolt to rewrite it as a character study instead. Wilson had a serious problem that had nothing to do with the quality of his writing. He'd been banned from working during a tense era of Hollywood political censorship. Studios were reluctant to publicly credit blacklisted writers. When Wilson read Bolt's final script, he noticed something. The dialogue had changed, but the scene structure he'd built was still largely intact. He asked for shared credit. Sam Spiegel's lawyers said no. Lawrence of Arabia premiered in December 1962 with Robert Bolt as the sole credited writer. Wilson kept fighting for recognition for the rest of his life. He passed away in 1978 without ever seeing his name added. It wasn't until September 1995 that the Writers Guild of America finally restored his credit as co-writer alongside Bolt. That's 33 years after the premiere, 17 years after Wilson's own passing. Most official listings for the film now credit both men. It just took more than 3 decades to get there.
Number 11.
David Lean was famously hands-on with every part of Lawrence of Arabia, which makes one small, persistent rumor about the film particularly fitting. Late in the film, Lawrence arrives at the Suez Canal on his journey back to Cairo. He encounters a motorcyclist on the opposite bank. The writer calls across the water with a simple, loaded question: "Who are you?" It's a small moment, but it lands as one of the film's most important lines. Lawrence spends the rest of the story wrestling with exactly that question. The motorcyclist on screen was played by Steve Birtles, the film's gaffer. Like several other crew members, he picked up a small on-camera role during the shoot to help keep costs down. But according to a rumor that's followed the film for decades, the voice audiences actually hear isn't Birtles' own. It was David Lean's dubbed in during post-production. Lean never publicly confirmed it either way, but Lean reportedly wanted total control over every detail. Personally voicing the exact moment his main character is forced to confront his own identity, that would be a very David Lean thing to do. If you like a good, never fully confirmed movie rumor as much as we do, hit that subscribe button. We've still got a few more.
Number 12.
Early in the film, Lawrence travels across the desert with his Bedouin guide. On the way to meet Prince Faisal, there's a small meal scene along the way. It's meant to show Lawrence trying to embrace Arab customs, not keeping his distance the way other British officers did. There's just one problem hiding in plain sight. When Lawrence reaches into the shared dish, he does it with his left hand, twice. Among Bedouin tribes, eating with the left hand is a real breach of etiquette. The left hand is traditionally set aside for personal hygiene, not food. It's not a small slip. It's the kind of mistake that would have stood out immediately to anyone actually familiar with the culture, which is exactly what makes it so ironic. Peter O'Toole is naturally left-handed. It appears to have been an unconscious, unscripted habit that made it into the final cut. The real T.E. Lawrence, by contrast, had spent years living and working in the Middle East before the war. He was fluent in local customs. He would never have made this mistake. The actor playing the guide shows no visible reaction on screen. Maybe it's Bedouin hospitality toward a guest, or maybe everyone involved simply missed it in the moment.
Number 13.
The film's opening sequence looks simple. Lawrence steps out of a quiet English cottage. He fills the oil tank on his motorcycle. He starts the engine. He rides off on the journey that will end his life. On screen, it plays like one place, one single afternoon. It wasn't even close. The shot of Lawrence filling the tank was filmed in Almeria, Spain. This happened over several days, in the summer of 1962. The crew had a problem. They needed Spanish ground to look like an English driveway, so they built a wooden stage. They painted it to resemble English paving. Then they shot from a high angle. That angle hid the unmistakably Spanish landscape all around it. For accuracy, the production went even further. They shipped a Bruff Superior SS-100 motorcycle over from England. This wasn't just any old bike. It was nearly identical to the actual motorcycle T.E. Lawrence was riding on the day he passed away, in 1935. Bruff Superior motorcycles were nicknamed the Rolls-Royce of motorcycles. Each one was largely hand-built. A single bike cost roughly a year's salary for an average middle-class Englishman at the time. Lawrence loved them enough to personally own 8 across his lifetime. He was riding the 7th when his fatal crash happened. The 8th was still being built, waiting for him when he passed away. Now here's the part almost nobody notices. The very next shot in the film shows Lawrence actually riding away down the road. That shot wasn't filmed in Spain at all. It was filmed months later, back in England on a quiet country lane in Chobham, Surrey. Watch closely and you can catch the seam. The harsh, high sunlight of a Spanish summer afternoon doesn't quite match the softer light of an English day. 2 shots, 2 countries, cut together as if they'd always belonged to the same afternoon. And this wasn't a one-off trick. It was basically how the entire production worked. David Lean originally wanted to shoot Lawrence of Arabia almost entirely in Jordan. Reality got in the way. Costs kept climbing. Cast and crew kept getting sick in the harsh desert conditions. So the production had to improvise constantly. It stitched together a fictional Arabia out of real locations scattered across 3 different countries. Cairo, Jerusalem, and Damascus all needed to appear on screen. None of them were actually filmed in Cairo, Jerusalem, or Damascus. Instead, the crew used the Spanish city of Seville to stand in for all 3. Landmarks like the Casa de Pilatos and the Alcazar of Seville helped sell the illusion. The dramatic assault on Aqaba wasn't filmed in the real Aqaba either. It was built from scratch, more than 300 fake buildings on a beach near Carbonera, Spain. The set was meticulously designed to match old photographs of what the real town looked like back in 1917. Even the massacre of retreating Turkish soldiers late in the film, one of the story's darkest sequences, was actually shot in Arzazate, Morocco, with Moroccan soldiers standing in for Ottoman troops. There's even a strange geography goof buried in all this stitching. In the finished film, Lawrence rides along the Aqaba shoreline at sunset, with the sun dropping into the sea behind him. Real Aqaba faces south. The sun never actually sets over that water. It's a lovely shot. It's also geographically impossible in real life because it wasn't filmed in Aqaba at all. It was shot in Almeria, which faces the opposite direction early in the morning, with the rising sun standing in for a sunset. So the very first thing audiences see in Lawrence of Arabia, a man calmly filling a motorcycle's oil tank, is already a small preview of the entire production's biggest trick. Split a location in two, shoot each half wherever the light, the budget, and the weather actually cooperate. Then cut it together so seamlessly that almost nobody in the audience ever notices the seam. If small details like that are exactly the kind of thing you love catching, subscribing means you won't miss the next one we dig up.
Number 14.
Lawrence of Arabia runs close to 4 hours. In all that time, it holds a strange, less celebrated record. It's possibly the longest film in history with no female character who ever speaks a single line of dialogue. Let that sink in for a second. Nearly 4 hours. Dozens of speaking characters, British generals, Arab princes, Turkish officers, desert guides. Not one woman among them gets so much as a single word of scripted dialogue. It's not really a mystery why. The story unfolds almost entirely inside a handful of worlds: British military command in Cairo, Ottoman forces, and Bedouin desert camps. In this historical setting, all of those worlds were overwhelmingly male. Women do appear briefly on screen, mostly as nurses, glimpsed in the background of the Damascus hospital scenes. They're visible. They're just never given anything to say. There's a nice detail hiding in that footage, though. One of those uncredited nurses was actually Barbara Cole, the film's own continuity supervisor. She was one of the very few women who worked on the production in any real capacity, on either side of the camera. She stepped in front of it for a few silent seconds, then went right back to her actual job, keeping continuity straight across a 9-month desert shoot. It's also worth remembering this wasn't really a Hollywood invention. The historical world's Lawrence of Arabia depicts British colonial military command, the Ottoman Army, and Bedouin fighting units in 1917 and 1918. Really were spaces where women had almost no public or official presence. The film's silence on female voices lines up, uncomfortably or not, with the actual historical record it was trying to dramatize. The complete absence of women wasn't just a storytelling choice, though. It became a genuine financial worry before the film even opened. Producer Sam Spiegel was reportedly nervous. A nearly 4-hour epic with no romantic lead and no major female star was a tough sell to 1962 audiences. Roadshow pictures of that era usually leaned hard on a marquee actress to move tickets. Lawrence of Arabia had nothing like that to offer. His fears looked justified as opening day got closer. By mid-October 1962, advance ticket sales for the film's U.S. opening sat at a mere $11,424. Compare that to the competition. Exodus had pulled in roughly $700,000 in advance sales. How the West Was Won had pulled in about $500,000. Lawrence of Arabia was being outsold by a factor of dozens, weeks before it had even premiered. For context, the two lead actors weren't exactly cashing in either. Peter O'Toole reportedly earned about $12,500 for playing the title role that would define the rest of his career. Omar Sharif reportedly made around $8,000 for playing Sherif Ali, a part originally intended for a different actor entirely. Meanwhile, Anthony Quinn, in the supporting role of Auda Abu Tayyi, reportedly pulled in $250,000, 20 times what O'Toole made to lead the entire film. Nobody involved was getting rich off the promise of ticket sales. That record comes with an asterisk, to be fair. Nobody has actually audited every film ever made to confirm Lawrence of Arabia is the definitive record holder. It's more accurate to call it one of the strongest contenders, a claim repeated by film historians and trivia sites often enough that it's become accepted wisdom, even without a formal, exhaustive count. Still, for a film this famous, spanning nearly 4 hours and dozens of characters, coming up completely empty on female dialogue is remarkable enough on its own, verified record or not. And then the film opened. Word of mouth did what advanced sales couldn't. Critics called it a landmark. Audiences kept showing up anyway, epic length and all. Lawrence of Arabia went on to win 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and it's now considered one of the greatest films ever made. Somewhere along the way, it also picked up one more small ironic footnote for its record collection. A nearly 4-hour masterpiece where if you're waiting to hear a single line of dialogue spoken by a woman, you will be waiting the entire runtime, and you still won't get one.
Number 15.
Filming Lawrence of Arabia in the Jordanian desert meant 9 grueling months. Heat, sand, endless hours on camelback. The schedule ran in short, brutal bursts, 10 to 12 days of shooting, then 2 or 3 days off. That was the rhythm of the entire production. Peter O'Toole and Omar Sharif, playing Lawrence and Sherif Ali on screen, used those short breaks to escape. Sometimes they went to Jerusalem. More often, they went to Beirut. In the early 1960s, Beirut was one of the most glamorous cities in the Middle East. People called it the Paris of the region. For two actors just emerging from weeks in a desert tent camp, it must have felt like landing on a different planet. By O'Toole's own account, given years later in an interview, the two of them didn't exactly take it easy once they got there. He recalled indulging in the high life without much restraint, nights out on the town, and, by his own telling, evenings that reportedly involved champagne poured by the bathtub full. Whatever the exact details, the picture is consistent. Two young actors, suddenly famous, suddenly flush with a little cash, and suddenly a very long way from the middle of the desert. Then there was the gambling. On one of those Beirut nights, O'Toole and Sharif sat down to play cards. By O'Toole's own telling, the stakes escalated fast. Before the night was over, the two of them had lost every single cent they'd earned across 9 full months of filming Lawrence of Arabia. Gone. In one sitting. You'd think that would be the lesson that stuck. It wasn't. The full shoot ran from May 1961 to September 1962. Well over a year, crisscrossing Jordan, Spain, Morocco, and England. About a year after that first Beirut night, the production had shifted, and the two found themselves gambling again. This time in Casablanca, Morocco, according to O'Toole, they matched their earlier disaster and then some, an entire year's worth of earnings, lost over the course of just 2 nights. To put those losses in some perspective, neither actor was working with a massive movie star paycheck at the time. O'Toole reportedly earned around $12,500 for the entire film, the role that would go on to define his career. Sharif reportedly made about $8,000. So when O'Toole talks about losing 9 months' wages in a single night, or a year's wages over 2 nights, he isn't describing pocket change. He's describing essentially the entire financial reward for months of brutal, physically demanding work, gone by sunrise more than once. Even the lead up to the film's own premiere wasn't exactly quiet. By some accounts, the night before Lawrence of Arabia's Hollywood opening, O'Toole and Sharif spent the evening out on the town with comedian Lenny Bruce. The night reportedly ran long enough that it became its own small piece of Hollywood legend, independent of anything that happened on screen the next day. Somehow, through all of it, both actors kept showing up to work the next morning, camels and all. Whatever they lost at those card tables in Beirut and Casablanca, the film they were making would go on to earn it back many, many times over. Lawrence of Arabia won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and it turned both O'Toole and Sharif into international stars almost overnight. The friendship the two of them built during those 9 brutal months, tents, cards, and all, lasted the rest of their lives. Sharif, in particular, never really put the cards down. He went on to become a genuinely elite bridge player in his later years. He was once ranked among the top 50 players in the world and served as captain of Egypt's national bridge team. Whatever pulled him to that card table in Beirut in 1961 apparently never fully let go. If you've made it this far, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and share this with the one friend who still hasn't seen Lawrence of Arabia on the biggest screen they can find. Remember fact 2? King Hussein handed over an entire brigade of his own Arab legion. He gave the production transportation, access, and his personal blessing. Jordan made this film possible. Here's the twist. When Lawrence of Arabia was finished, Jordan banned it. So did several other Arab nations. The reason? Many felt the film gave a disrespectful, inaccurate picture of Arab people and Arab history. It wasn't a small controversy. It shaped how the film was received across the region for years. There was one major exception: Egypt. Omar Sharif, an Egyptian himself, personally arranged a private screening for President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Nasser watched it. He liked what he saw, especially the film's portrayal of Arab unity and independence. With his approval, Lawrence of Arabia got a wide release in Egypt. It became a genuine hit there. So the finished film ended up living 2 completely different lives in the same region. Banned in the country that helped build it, on a set staffed by real soldiers and blessed by a real king. Embraced next door, thanks to one actor's personal effort with one head of state. Sometimes the story behind the ban is just as complicated as the story on screen. 15 facts, and that's really only scratching the surface. A single-use camera lens, a royal marriage, a screenwriter who waited over 3 decades for his name back, a camel that may have saved a life, echoing something that happened for real 45 years earlier. Lawrence of Arabia is proof of something. Sometimes the story behind a movie is every bit as unbelievable as the story on the screen. If you learned something new today, let us know in the comments. Tell us which fact surprised you most. We'll see you in the next one.